Good day, colleagues and mentor. I'm going to talk to you about Heartwater occurrence in Gauteng and Mpumalanga provinces. What I'm going to talk about is the introduction, the study area that I chose for this project, the results I got for this project, the discussion that came from these results, and the references that I used. So, let's start with the introduction. Cowdrosis, or more commonly known as Heartwater, is a disease that affects ruminants in South Africa. It is a fatal disease which is very vital to understand, especially with the farmers of South Africa. It is non-contagious, but it is notifiable, as many livestock do die from Heartwater. The causative organism is Caldra ruminantium. This causes Heartwater, and it is a retisca organism. It is transferred via the vector transmission from the bond tick or the Anaboloma herbarium. It causes great loss in the farming sector from poor farmers as well as rural farmers. It causes a high mortality, as the symptoms of Heartwater can vary from having just a fever all the way up to having neurological symptoms, and then follows death. Due to the poor farmers and their livestock usually using communal areas or having too many livestock and different species of livestock so close together in small areas, a large reservoir of the organism can be housed in these susceptible hosts. Then the vector, which is the bond tick, can transmit from one host to the next relatively easy in a very short span of time. So my study area I chose was Gauteng and Mpumalanga. These two provinces are usually used for farming and agriculture, as well as it is in the northeast part of Southern Africa. I chose these two because they are endemic Heartwater areas in South Africa, due to the dry areas and the large amount of animal production within these two small provinces. The region is a tropical region that is quite close to the equator, with high temperatures and high rainfall in the months of summer and spring. But due to these high temperatures, there is a low humidity. This allows the vector of the bond tick to thrive in the areas that they are usually found. This also gives rise to the large habitat for transmission, again due to the communal areas that a lot of livestock are using, as well as the different species and the large amount of livestock that are in the same area very close together. So the results that I got were from the Ruminant Veterinary Association of South Africa. They observed the new cases and recorded them for Heartwater. I extrapolated this data from January 2018 till the last recorded data that they had was July 2020. With the results came a large amount of new cases that have been seen in Gauteng and in Mpumalanga. 76 cases were reported by different vets in these two provinces, where 36 occurred in Gauteng and 14 in Mpumalanga. in 2090, there was an increase up to 100 total cases in Gauteng and Mpumalanga, from 45 in Gauteng to 55 in Mpumalanga. And our new cases from 2020, we're already at 65 cases from January to July. And this is still continuing as there are still half a year to go. 26 were in Gauteng and 19 were in Mpumalanga. We can see from this data as well that it has also been broken down into seasons. Seasons could also have an effect on the spread of Heartwater. So, what I found out from this data is that even though there has been a large amount of death due to Heartwater, there are still a low number of cases that are being reported by Rivasa. This could be because not a lot of vets are part of Rivasa, or it could be that farmers only use the symptoms and the presence of ticks to treat for Heartwater, or they don't even get their vet involved and the animal dies without them having any knowledge of what killed it, and this causes them to put it under a natural death. So just because it is not reported doesn't mean it doesn't happen. It is a fatal disease. A lot of these cases that were reported, we found out that most of them actually died because they were in the subacute or acute part of the disease. Their symptoms reached the neurological part and eventually they couldn't live anymore and they died. It is also impossible to eradicate because, again, of the large amount of the reservoirs in the different hosts. Heartwater does not only affect cattle, it also affects pretty much every single livestock species there is in South Africa. So there is a lot of hosts that the vector of the bond tick can go and feed off of and transmit it in their saliva to the next animal that they go and feed. Again, just as I said with the eradication, there are a large number of ticks that feed on a variety of different hosts. The bond tick can feed on any animal when it comes into contact with it, even humans. Cases again have not been reported, either natural deaths as they would write it off, or deaths that maybe rural or poor farmers have not been able to find their cattle, so they just write them off. They could have died from Heartwater or any other disease in the veld without anybody knowing. So, it can be seen that seasons allow the prevalence of ticks as well as Heartwater to increase in certain months. The warmer the months, the more ticks and Heartwaters we will see. Winter months in South Africa are not really harsh, so this means that the habitat and the environment for the vectors, such as the bond tick, which spreads Heartwater specifically, can live and thrive throughout our winter months. Areas are not involved enough to make sure that all the agriculture is protected from Heartwater and the other diseases. Areas, especially these in Gauteng and Mpumalanga, are more agricultural areas, so there are usually more cases within these areas. And more veterinarians in agricultural areas would usually test for cases of Heartwater. But a lot of farmers cannot afford this kind of test for each and every animal that displays any kind of symptoms. So not all veterinarians can test and get a correct diagnosis for Heartwater. This causes, again, for us to get a low amount of recorded cases for Heartwater, as well as not having any of the farmers actually know and understand what Heartwater is. So my recommendation would be that if we could make Heartwater a vaccination annually, just like we do brucellosis and tuberculosis, we need to make sure that we are keeping these animals safe from these vectors, from the organism that causes Heartwater. We also need to have days and workshops with farmers, especially in the rural and agricultural and poorer areas in South Africa, where we can just explain to them, have a time where they can understand from us and we can understand from them, to see what the difficulties and how we can all come together and fix it. Also, most state vets cannot get to these areas in time, so we need the farmers to understand and know what to look out for and what to do in these certain cases. We need to be able to help and stop the Heartwater from being as fatal as it is, and we need to try and protect these animals for these farmers. Thank you for listening to my presentation. These are the references that I used.